What's up, everybody? Right now inside the UFC, there are some potential matchups on the horizon that the community is discussing that some of these, maybe they're a no-brainer that they happen next. However, we're not so sure, right? The way the UFC has tended to operate over the years, sometimes fights that we want to happen, fights that should happen next, don't always happen next. So in this video, I'm going to be listing out my top 5 fights that I want to see happen, whether it's, kind of towards the end of the year here, or early 2025, depending on how things line up. And most of these are kind of no-brainers at this point, right? I feel like we can all be in agreement with the matchups that I'm going to list. But there is one that I'm going to save for a little later on in the video that is a little bit of a curveball. And of course, I will explain my reasoning for the curveball because there are some signs that point towards this being a potential option. But let's waste no time. No more bullshit. Let's hop right into this. No bullshit, no magic, as Yuri Prohaska would say. Okay, number 1. Jon Bones Jones and Tom Aspinall, right? So obviously some things have to happen, obviously, to get to this matchup, which to me is just ridiculous, right? The only people that I think are out there that actually want to see Jon Jones versus Stipe Miocic are the fucking old hags out there that have been long-time UFC fans. Man, listen, there's no way in your right mind that you could sit there and say, you know what, Stipe Miocic, who hasn't fought in years, who hasn't fought since the Venom fight kits have been around, is coming off of a KO loss back in 2021 against Francis Ngannou where he got flatlined, is worthy of a title shot against Jon Jones inside the heavyweight division when we have an interim champion in Tom Aspinall who essentially is a phenom inside the heavyweight division, right? We have not seen anybody that really fights like Tom Aspinall at heavyweight, right? The power, the speed, the footwork, the dynamic grappling as well. And if we're going to point out a guy in the heavyweight division that is a bad matchup for Jon, it's Tom Aspinall. Now, I'm not one of those guys that sits here and says, oh, Tom's going to knock out Jon Jones and dominate him, and it's the worst matchup for Jon Jones. Well, I do think it's the worst matchup for Jon Jones. I still think Jon has a shot at beating him. Like, I think that I could say it's a 50-50 fight. I think Jon is a better grappler. I know Tom has good grappling as well. But where the intrigue comes is Tom Aspinall has looked really unstoppable at heavyweight, right? We saw him blow out his knee against Curtis Blades, but outside of that, he's been dominant, going out there starching Sergey Pavlovich and basically running through the competition at heavyweight. He has a big matchup coming up, defending his interim heavyweight strap at UFC 304 against Curtis Blades, so he has to get through that first. But when is it that we ever have an interim champion inside a division that doesn't get that title shot next? Like, this is just absolutely crazy. This is Dana White privilege at its finest for Jon Jones. I mean, God forbid you mention anything that is negative towards Jon Jones, and Dana White's going to talk about how he's the GOAT. You could be like, Dana, what'd you have for dinner tonight? Oh, what did I have? Don't worry about what I had. Listen, Jon Jones is the GOAT. Like, this man cannot stop talking about Jon Jones. So we know he wants to send Jon off into retirement. Look, I've been on the record saying, I know I'm rambling a little bit here, but I feel like Jon Jones and Stipe are both going to retire after they fight each other. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope Jon does beat Stipe for what it's worth, and I want this matchup between Tom Aspinall and Jon Jones because one of the areas that Jon has struggled in the past, guys that have good timing, good speed, good footwork, and particularly excel in the boxing. That's where we have seen Jon struggle. We saw it against Alexander Gustafsson. We saw it against Thiago Santos, right? We saw it against Dominic Reyes. And that was a blown out both knees, I think, Thiago Santos, right? So we got to see some vulnerabilities in Jon Jones in that matchup. Nonetheless, this is a matchup that every single fight fan out there wants to see. One of the biggest fights that the UFC can make inside the organization right now. We better see Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall at some point. Moving on. Fight number 2. Max Holloway versus Ilia Topuria. Right now, I know that a lot of people are going to say, look, Jake, this fight's next. I mean, I certainly hope it's next, man, because I think stylistically right now inside the UFC, this is the most intriguing matchup to me on paper, right? And for what it would be inside the octagon as well, I don't think that it's going to be some barn burner brawl, like what people might think. But I think that this is going to be a strategic chess match, right? You got Ilia Topuria, who has, in my opinion, the best boxing inside of the UFC. Just the way he stands, the way he moves, that good high guard, the shoulder roll, the head movement. He punches in combinations. He's got outstanding power. He's fought at lightweight before. We've seen him have KOs both at 45 and 55. He's a monster. He's a monster. Max Holloway the guy doesn't get the credit he deserves, him and his team, for the way that he's been able to evolve his game, stance switching, adding kicks to the body, even some light leg kicks. I know he's not putting a lot of heat behind him, but still something for the opponent to think about. The movement, the power. We've seen Max Holloway elevate his game to where I think this is a very intriguing matchup. However, I like the idea of Max staying at 55, and I think that there's a real shot behind the scenes. Part of the holdup could be, look, Max is the BMF champ. The BMF title, is kind of a 55 and 170 pound, belt. That's kind of where it's floated around those two weight classes. I don't know if Max is willing to go back to 45, right? I know that there's a potential title shot here against Ilia Topuria, and I think it's Max's if he wants it. He says he wants to fight. But I'm just not so sure the UFC goes this route because he has the BMF title fight. Do they try to book some matchup, a fun fight like a Dustin Poirier trilogy? Does Conor McGregor potentially swoop in? I don't know. But this, to me, is a no-brainer matchup the UFC has to book because Max Holloway going back to 45, there will be some questions in terms of the durability. Ilia has incredible power, incredible speed, incredible boxing. This is an absolute masterclass in terms of strategy, technique. We need this fight, UFC. Don't fumble this one. Moving on. Fight number 3. Alex Pereira-Magomed Ankalaev. Now, I know that there's a lot of haters out there on the side of Magomed Ankalaev, right? They're going to say that he doesn't deserve a title shot. He's coming off a win over Johnny Walker. He's doing a lot of talking, but hasn't really faced the top-tier competition inside the division, which I kind of disagree with, right? He went out there at a very close decision that led to a draw against Jan Blachowicz, which pissed Dana off. I thought that was hilarious. He literally booked Glover Teixeira versus Jamal Hill for the belt in Brazil before he even got to the post-fight press conference the same night. The man was disgusted. I thought that was funny, but nonetheless, Magomed Ankalaev, in my opinion, I've been on the record saying he's the second best striker in the division behind Alex Pereira. People want to fight me on that, saying it's Jan Blachowicz. Look, if Magomed Ankalaev knew how to deal with a low kick and check a leg kick, he outstrikes Jan Blachowicz, in my opinion, right? That was where it starts and stems from. Jan Blachowicz is sitting at range, just blasting leg kicks, shin to shin, and he's made of titanium and just kept blasting the leg kicks. But outside of that, Ankalaev has very sharp boxing. He has good movement. He has a good rear leg kick that he likes to throw to the body, to the head. He has good timing, good speed. I could see him potentially catching Poatan with something, although not very likely. But what's intriguing about this matchup, Poatan's one of the biggest names in the UFC right now. We've seen him basically be in every type of fight thus far, right? We've seen him against Izzy, a technical striker, him chop him down and be able to get him out of there with a left hook. We've seen him KO'd by Izzy. We've seen him bounce back and get into a grueling dogfight with Jan Blachowicz where he faces a lot of adversity. We've seen him against Yuri. We have just seen Alex go to that next level, KOing Jamal Hill, going out there and making easy work of Yuri in the rematch. What we have not seen is him against a guy that possesses the grappling wrestling threat. Now, I want to say more of a wrestling threat because Jan Blachowicz, he's more of a submission threat than Magomed Ankalaev, right? Jan Blachowicz, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He's actually has quite a bit of submissions on his resume, whereas Magomed Ankalaev, people want to talk about the grappling. He's more of a control style wrestler, right? We got to call it what it is, man. The body of work that we've seen inside his pro career, dating to outside the UFC, to him coming inside the UFC, he basically is just grappling for control time. He's not landing vicious ground and pound. He's not really subbing people. But the point is, this is an intriguing matchup to see Alex go in there against a guy that does have the ability to take him down. Could he get him down? I mean, possibly, but we don't know. Alex, it seems like he has improved his takedown defense. He is very much improving. We know how elite he is on the feet. Could Magomed possibly catch him with something? Magomed says, I want to stand in front of him. I doubt it. I'm calling bluff there. But nonetheless, that is a very intriguing matchup that hopefully the UFC books next, which I imagine they will before Poatan attempts a shot at heavyweight. Moving on. This is my curveball matchup. This is the one that may surprise you a little bit. I put up a poll on my channel that I was kind of alluding to this and hinting at this. I mentioned this in a live stream recently of mine. Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier 4 for the quadrilogy. Listen, I know people are going to say, dude, this isn't realistic. This is bullshit. You're just kind of blowing smoke here. Guys, I don't think I am, man. Listen, Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor have been going at it back and forth on social media recently. You know, Dustin's had some things to say in his interviews. Conor McGregor, I mean, Dustin Poirier is living rent-free in Conor's head. He's taking a lot of shots at him. And we've kind of seen the talk of Michael Chandler and Conor McGregor die out, right? This fight was supposed to be booked for UFC 303. Yes, Conor McGregor pulled out with the pinky toe injury, but there's still a lot of people out there speculating what was the real reason here. Was it the injury? Was that enough to get him to pull out, or was there a little bit more to the story? I think the guy was just injured. However, Conor, he's at a very unique point in his career right now, right? Conor McGregor could fight a trash can and people are going to tune in and watch. Like Michael Chandler, he's not needed for Conor McGregor to fight. Like Michael Chandler, I think thinks he's a little bit of a bigger star or draw than he actually is. Conor McGregor could fight anybody on the UFC roster and it will do the same amount of pay-per-views as it would do if he fights Michael Chandler. The one that can elevate it would be a grudge match with bad blood, a crazy feud, a crazy rivalry that's going to have the no glove touch. The security's going to have to be involved, and that would be Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor going at it again. And listen, before you call me crazy, Conor doesn't have to fight Michael Chandler, man. Like, I know they did The Ultimate Fighter. We're seeing Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko. There's no guarantees that matchup's going to happen. And hell, they're just, did The Ultimate Fighter together. So we're seeing The Ultimate Fighter coaching, fighters line up against each other is not so much a guarantee anymore. So I hope that this isn't a trend, right? Because then it kind of defeats a little bit of the purpose of the show. But this is a big matchup. It has the fire to it. It's got the bad blood. And it sells more pay-per-views than Michael Chandler and Conor McGregor. It absolutely does. Look, the gate basically was crazy for UFC 303. You mean to tell me that in December, Dustin Poirier is only looking for big fights? It's basically 1-1 between him and Conor McGregor, right? Conor knocked him out back in the day. Poirier in UFC 257 gets the KO over McGregor. Then there's the third fight where, yes, Poirier was having success and he was winning the fight. However, the leg breaks, so it's a doctor stoppage. So it's like, yeah, Poirier won, but there's a little bit of an asterisk there. Solve it. Do it in the fourth fight here. It's a huge fight. Conor, look, his time left in the fight game is limited. If he's going to put all that he has aside, all the businesses, all the luxury lifestyle, it needs to motivate him. And I just don't think he's that motivated to fight Chandler, man. I don't think he is. I don't think it's entertaining to him, right? I mean, Chandler's a fun fight, but he wants that bad blood. I think Conor McGregor needs that to bring out the best in him, to come out there. He wants that one back. You know he's bitter over the L to Dustin Poirier. That's why I list this matchup as a possible option. Wouldn't be surprised if the UFC looks to go this route for Conor McGregor's next fight. Moving on. Last but not least, this feels like a no-brainer to me, right? In the beginning of the video, I said, look, some of these are no-brainers. This one's probably the biggest no-brainer, and that is Islam Makhachev versus Arman Tsarukyan. Now, the reason that I have this on my list is most people are going to say, well, no, duh, Jake, like Arman's the next contender. He just beat Charles Oliveira. But to me, it's a little bit more than that. It's what's at stake here, right? Islam Makhachev, he's been absolutely dominant basically since he's been inside the UFC, right? We saw the KO loss to Martins, and a lot of people made that out to be a lot more than what it is. I mean, where is Martins now, right? Let's just call that what it is. Makhachev, it was a learning moment. He just got caught. Outside of that, he's looked spectacular. Coming off the crazy fight against Dustin Poirier, we have seen this man. His striking has improved every time out. He basically outstruck Dustin Poirier in the last matchup, the threat of the takedown, going in there against a guy in Arman Tsarukyan who, they have bad blood, man. This is going to be a rivalry. Islam Makhachev beat Arman the first time. It was probably Islam's hardest fight, right? Arman said that numerous times. Him and, Islam and Arman, man, they don't like each other. So we have that bad blood feud. And I'm not saying the UFC has to be the WWE and we always need these matchups where guys don't like each other and there's trash talk. But can we agree that it is fun when we get that every now and then? Like how we got UFC 305, Izzy versus Duplessis, like a little bit of bad blood and that rivalry type of feel. I mean, it just adds that much more to the event. So I think Islam Makhachev, there'd be a lot at stake here because if Arman's able to beat Islam, we potentially get a trilogy. Or if Islam goes out there and is able to beat Arman Tsarukyan, he kind of, buries the hatchet on that one because he would go up 2-0 on the exchange between those two. And then we could potentially see Islam move up to welterweight to take on Leon Edwards or whoever the champ would be at that time. But these are 5 fights that the UFC, in my opinion, cannot afford to fumble. Whether these happen, this year, early next year, sometime in the near future, within the year, these are matchups I believe the UFC cannot afford to fumble because they are big fights that the fans one to see. Now, do me a favor, like this video if you enjoyed it. Comment your thoughts below on the 5 fights I listed. Are there any fights you would add in? Do you agree with some of the fights I have? Are there any matchups you might change or swap out? Subscribe to the channel. Help your boy out. I would greatly appreciate it. See you next time.